Hi everyone, welcome to Roots and Routes, a space for everyone. When I say everyone, I mean Africans and non-Africans, people living in the continent and those living abroad. So whether you grew up in Dar es Salaam, Dakar, New York, Nairobi, Malmo, Kampala or London, it doesn't matter. This space is for you. So Roots and Routes is about the roots we come from and the routes we are taking in life. And today I want to introduce you to what this channel is all about, why it exists, and what you can expect from this channel. So let me start with the big picture. Roots and Routes is where Africa meets the world. And I'll tell you a little bit of history why I started this channel. This is actually connected to my other channel, which is a Swahili channel, which actually covered exactly what I'm doing in this channel, but it was in Swahili. And therefore I thought, okay, there's of course a lot of people watching this content in Swahili, but if the idea is to reach the Africans in general, why not use a language where we can actually reach more people? And this Roots and Route came about. So this is the space where we dig deep into the African experience, not just the stereotypes, not just the headlines, and not just simplified narratives, but real stories, the complex stories, the stories that shape who we are and how we move in the world. We talk about identity, culture, history, migration, and everyday realities of Africans at home and abroad. This is the kind of content I wish I had growing up. Honest discussion, global perspective, and African voices telling the African stories. But also global audience to hear these African stories, because for a long time there's been a disconnect between the actual stories that Africans have and the actual stories that the globe or the world is receiving. And therefore, the picture that people have here outside of Africa is different from the picture of Africa that Africans have at home. One big part of this channel is the diaspora experience, because if you ever moved from Africa to another country, or if you grew up in diaspora, it's a whole journey. It's a complex journey, and therefore this podcast will cover that journey and have discussions with people who took that journey. So this kind of journey involves culture shock, there's funny moments, awkward moments, and emotional ones. And we're gonna cover all of that. There are struggles as well, undocumented struggles, the side that people don't talk about, the fear, uncertainty, and the hustle. For example, the issue of sending money home, what kind of pressure that brings, the pressure of helping families while trying to build your own life. There's a broader issue of identity confusion, where people feel Africans abroad, but when they go home, they feel foreign. At home, you are the guy who came from abroad and everyone treats you differently. Abroad, you are that African who is not like us and everyone treats you differently. These are real topics that affect millions of people. And for those who are not African, this is your chance to learn, listen, and understand what life looks like for an African navigating the world. Another part of Roots and Routes, like I said, is something I call Africa Explained. There is a huge gap between what the world thinks of Africa, or what the world thinks Africa is, and what actually Africa is. So we're breaking it down. We'll have the part where we will look into what the world gets wrong about Africa, have those discussions, and what went wrong where. And then we'll have discussions about myths that people still believe about Africa, myths about people in Africa, myths about history and culture, the history that you never learned in school, the everyday life that media never shows. Because one of the things that I realized when I moved here to Denmark was that the Africa I knew and the Africa that was presented in the TVs, in advertisement, it was two different Africas, and I wasn't sure which Africa was actually portrayed here in Denmark. We are used to make a joke about Americans calling Africa a country, but we can go a bit farther than that, because Africa is not one country. Africa is not one story. Africa is not even one experience, because it's so diverse. The beauty, the innovation, the chaos, the complexity, it's just like anywhere else in the world, but there's that African touch to it. So our job here will be to expand that understanding and to try to have like interviews and talk with people who are directly involved in these issues. And that's where we're gonna bring people to have interview with that can expand our understanding. People who can bring honest personal commentary. Of course, because I'm a host, you also hear my personal take on this. There will be, like I said, there will be a part of diaspora issue. I'm a diaspora myself, therefore you'll hear this. There will be maybe here and there a touch of the global news and discussion about world events, but significant one, because this is not a news podcast, but it's going to be actually from African lens, like I said. And this is because the world hits us differently, whether you like it or not. Whether it be politics, culture, immigration, or global trends, there'll be honest, sometimes bold commentary on how these things affect Africans, both at home and abroad. Because sometimes these things affect Africans different than they affect the rest of the world. And it goes without saying that maybe not everyone will agree, and that's not the intention that everyone agrees, but that's the whole idea, because this place is for a conversation to start. It's a kickstart of the conversation. So if you think something is misrepresented, or if you think something could be construed in a different way, then please, you're welcome to comment or be part of the interviews or be part of the commentary. Because we will have these deep guest interviews. And actually, if you want to be part of these guest interviews, you are so welcome. If you have a topic you want to discuss, please contact us, and then we'll make arrangement for the interview, or at least to include your commentary and your ideas in the future episodes. And remember, we'll be having conversation with Africans and those who are not Africans from everywhere in the world. Here I'm talking about people who left the continent, people who returned, people who stayed, and people who found new routes completely, or people who found home in Africa from elsewhere in the world. The interviews will be with entrepreneurs, creators, activists, immigrants, students, refugees. Basically, it's going to be about real journeys and real lessons. Because of what we are covering, obviously, you're going to hear stories about struggle. You're going to hear stories about success. You're going to hear stories about failure, because all these things work together in a way. If you take that risk of starting a business, you're going to face these things. If you take that risk of taking a leap into another country, another continent, another culture, you're going to face these things. It's going to be a situation where you have to find your identity. Not only to find your identity, but at some point you'll have maybe to reinvent yourself. Because that's part of the journey. It can be also building from scratch in abroad, or building from scratch for those people who move to Africa as well. Or it can be that you're living abroad and you are trying to keep things going back at home. These are the stories that makes us human. These are the stories that connects us all. And though I don't like to use the word mission, but in this context, the mission of this podcast or this platform is to connect Africans globally. That's number one. And number two is to open door for non-Africans who wants to connect with Africa or understand the continent better. So this will be done by breaking stereotypes, challenging lazy narratives that are out there, but also amplify the voices that are usually not heard. So if you are someone who is curious, someone who loves honest conversations, and you are African living abroad, trying to make sense of life. If you're non-African and you want to understand the continent beyond the headlines in the news or in the media, or if you are living on a continent and you're wondering how things look from the outside, or if you're just someone who loves hearing real stories, then R&R or Roots and Routes is your place. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. Make sure you like the videos that are presented. Make sure you contribute by commenting on the videos and giving your ideas to make this community bigger and to allow for our story to be shared. So welcome to R&R. So let's take Africa to the world and bring the world back to Africa. This is Oswald. I'm your host for Roots and Routes.